Have you noticed how uncomfortable people become when you stop explaining yourself? When you stop arguing, stop defending, stop seeking approval, something strange happens. The room grows quiet, but the tension grows louder. Why? Because silence is a form of power that many people do not understand. Most people know how to respond to words. They know how to challenge them, twist them, criticize them, or dismiss them. But when faced with silence, they lose the ability to control the conversation. Marcus Aurelius understood this long before our modern age. He knew that the strongest person in the room is often not the one speaking the most. It is the one who has mastered himself enough to remain calm when others demand a reaction. People expect noise. They expect explanations. They expect you to defend every decision, justify every action, and answer every criticism. But when you choose silence instead, you remove the battlefield entirely, and that is what intimidates them. Not because silence is aggressive, but because silence reveals strength. The person who cannot control himself must speak. The person who fears rejection must explain. The person who depends on approval must defend. But the person who is secure within himself can remain still. He does not rush to prove his worth. He does not chase validation. He does not surrender his peace simply because someone else demands it. And this is what many people find unsettling, because silence forces them to face something they cannot easily influence: your inner stability. Think carefully. How many conflicts continue only because both sides keep feeding them with words? One insult answered with another, one accusation followed by a defense, one criticism followed by an argument. The fire survives because someone keeps adding fuel, but silence removes the fuel, and suddenly those who expected a battle are left standing alone. This is why silence often feels intimidating. The Stoics understood that your energy is one of your most valuable possessions. Every unnecessary argument steals from it. Every attempt to convince those committed to misunderstanding you drains it. Every emotional reaction places your peace in someone else's hands. So Marcus Aurelius would remind himself, why should I allow another person's behavior to determine my state of mind? And perhaps you should ask yourself the same question. Why surrender your tranquility merely because someone expects a response? Why abandon your principles simply because someone demands an explanation? Why trade peace for approval? Silence is not weakness. Silence is often the highest expression of self-mastery, and those who have never mastered themselves can sense that power immediately. That is why it intimidates them. But there is a deeper reason silence unsettles people. Silence creates a mirror. When words disappear, people are left alone with their own thoughts. Many spend their lives escaping that moment. They fill every empty space with noise, constant conversations, constant distractions, constant opinions, anything to avoid sitting quietly with themselves. Yet the Stoics taught that self-examination is essential for a good life. Marcus Aurelius often withdrew from the noise of the world, not because he hated people, but because he understood the value of reflection. He knew that wisdom grows in stillness. A troubled mind seeks distraction. A disciplined mind seeks understanding. When you remain silent, you demonstrate a comfort with yourself that many people have never developed. You show that you do not need constant attention to feel valuable. You do not need endless praise to feel worthy. You do not need approval to know who you are. And this confidence speaks louder than words ever could. Consider the mountain. It does not announce its strength. It does not demand admiration. It simply stands, through storms, through wind, through seasons, unmoved. Silence works in the same way. It does not need to advertise its power. Its strength comes from its stability. This is why some people become frustrated when they cannot provoke you. They expect an emotional reaction. They expect anger. They expect defensiveness. They expect you to lose control, because when you lose control, they gain influence. But when you remain silent and composed, they lose that influence. You remind them that your emotions belong to you, not to them, not to their opinions, not to their behavior. This lesson is difficult because human nature pushes us toward reaction. When criticized, we want to defend ourselves. When insulted, we want to strike back. When misunderstood, we want to explain. Yet Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that another person's judgment cannot harm his character. Only his own actions could do that. Think about that carefully. A harsh comment cannot damage your integrity. A false accusation cannot destroy your virtue. An insult cannot reduce your worth. These things only become powerful when you grant them power through your reaction. Silence is often the refusal to grant that power. It is the decision to remain the master of your own mind, and mastery of the mind is the foundation of Stoicism. The Stoic does not ask, "How do I control other people?" The Stoic asks, "How do I control myself?" Because one is impossible. The other is freedom. Most people spend years trying to manage the opinions of others, trying to avoid criticism, trying to win everyone's approval, trying to make sure they are understood by everyone. But this pursuit never ends. There will always be another opinion, another judgment, another critic, another misunderstanding. The wise person recognizes this and stops chasing what cannot be controlled. Instead, he focuses on what is within his power, his thoughts, his actions, his responses, his character. And sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. This understanding creates a quiet strength that few people possess, a strength that cannot be shaken by gossip, cannot be disturbed by criticism, cannot be controlled by provocation. It is the strength of a person who knows himself, and that kind of strength will always intimidate those who depend on controlling the reactions of others. There is another truth that Marcus Aurelius understood. The most powerful people are rarely the loudest. They do not feel the need to dominate every conversation. They do not rush to express an opinion on every matter. They do not constantly seek the attention of others. Instead, they observe. They listen. They think before they speak. Why? Because wisdom grows through observation, not constant reaction. The person who is always talking learns very little. The person who is always reacting sees very little. But the person who remains quiet long enough to observe begins to understand things that others miss. He notices intentions, he notices patterns, he notices the emotions hidden beneath people's words. Silence sharpens awareness. This is why Stoics valued restraint, not because they feared speaking, but because they understood the value of speaking only when necessary. A single thoughtful sentence often carries more weight than 100 careless words. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet his writings reveal a man deeply concerned with discipline, reflection, and self-control. He did not waste energy trying to appear important. He focused on becoming worthy. There is a difference. Many people want to appear strong. Few are willing to become strong. Many want to appear wise. Few are willing to develop wisdom. Many want respect. Few are willing to cultivate character. Silence helps build these qualities, because silence creates space. Space to think, space to reflect, space to choose a response instead of surrendering to an impulse. Every moment of silence is an opportunity to practice self-mastery. When anger rises and you choose calm, you become stronger. When criticism comes and you choose composure, you become stronger. When provocation appears and you choose restraint, you become stronger. Most people never realize this. They believe strength is found in winning arguments. But the Stoics knew a greater victory, the victory over oneself. Anyone can shout, anyone can insult, anyone can react, but not everyone can remain calm when emotions demand action. That requires discipline, that requires courage, that requires mastery, and mastery is intimidating because it cannot be manipulated easily. People can manipulate your anger. They can manipulate your fear. They can manipulate your insecurity, but they struggle to manipulate a person who is at peace. A calm mind is difficult to control. A disciplined mind is difficult to influence. A silent mind is difficult to provoke. This is why silence often feels powerful. It signals that you are no longer governed by every emotion that passes through you. You have learned to pause, to observe, to choose, instead of being carried away by every wave of circumstance. Imagine a storm crashing against a cliff. The wind screams, the rain falls. The waves strike with tremendous force, yet the cliff remains, unmoved. The storm eventually passes, the cliff remains. Such is the person who has cultivated inner silence. The world may become chaotic, people may criticize, circumstances may change, yet within there is stability. Within there is order, within there is peace, and nothing intimidates people more than someone who cannot be easily disturbed. Because in a world addicted to reaction, calmness appears extraordinary. In a world filled with noise, silence becomes rare, and what is rare is often powerful. So the next time someone misunderstands your silence, do not rush to explain it. Do not feel compelled to justify it. Do not abandon it simply because others are uncomfortable. Remember what Marcus Aurelius understood. You do not need to win every argument. You do not need to answer every critic. You do not need to prove yourself to everyone. Your task is not to manage the minds of others. Your task is to govern your own. And when you learn that lesson, silence ceases to be an absence of words. It becomes a presence of strength, a strength rooted not in domination, but in self-control. A strength rooted not in pride, but in wisdom. A strength rooted not in fear, but in peace. And that is why silence will always intimidate those who have not yet learned to master themselves.